those beautiful clouds?
Those aren't clouds, Daddy. Those are chemtrails.
Chemtrails? What are chemtrails?
Chemical trails, Daddy, and they're very bad.
I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you cry. I just wanna see you smile. Baby, I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you die. I just wanna see you smile. Baby, look up in the sky and we can see clear. Blue skies are gold and white. Lines appear. Them say it's natural. Me not believe them. Them say it's vital. Me not listen to them. Something strange is going on. Feel it in my heart, sensing something strong. Gotta save the future, put the rumors to rest. Gotta help the children and give it a best can. Stand around and be blind to the fast can. Taking no more, how can they relax that? I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you cry. I just wanna see you smile. Baby, I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you die. I just wanna see you smile. Baby, living on earth, we must respect the earth. Human and animal, we all deserve the right to peace and opportunity. But nowadays we are blind.
This is Dane Wigington with GeoEngineering Watch Radio for the week of October 11th, 2014. Sorry about the audio there. Seemed like it was having some trouble speeding up and slowing down, at least on my end. But still a great song from done by Morgan Carey, or produced by Morgan Carey with the artist Skull. Another week in the asylum goes by, and I use that term a lot, but I don't know what other term to use. I mean, it's truly astounding what's unfolding on planet Earth from so many directions that it's hard to keep track of. And I often wonder what another intelligent life form or unintelligent life form would think if they watched this whole circus of insanity that's unfolding on our planet. Because I think it would be hard to describe the human race as a whole as behaving in a rational manner. And I say this not just, we all see the power structure, and we've all talked a lot about the clinical insanity of the power structure, and there's no denying that. But we also see that this power structure would not be in place if not for the total apathy and complacency of a population that by and large simply wants to keep their head in the sand, pursue their own personal pleasures, and really has shown very little willingness to act for the common good. It's astounding to me. And I'll bring Russ Tanner and Greg Palin in the conversation here in a few. We have Russ with us today as always, and Greg's joining us from his cabin in Georgia today. But I want to elaborate on this just a little bit because we see, and I know people that have wanted to blame absolutely everything on the power structure. And I certainly am not trying to detract from that blame, but there's a lot of blame that needs to be borne by the population who simply doesn't want to know, doesn't want to learn, doesn't want to challenge their own beliefs, and quite simply that's how we end up here. So for decades, so long as they don't have to face anything, they don't face anything. And they stay rooted in beliefs that aren't based in fact, that aren't based in reality, but that just simply feel good. And this is on all sides of the equation. And even right now, as the Titanic sinks, Titanic Earth, and it's sinking by the day, we still have the proverbial rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. And this is not new. I'm a student that I somehow had put in my lap when I was very young. It's an anchor for me my entire life, and nothing's changed. When we look at ancient Rome and what Nero fiddles as Rome burns, and that's exactly what we have. Only now the consequences are total. And I saw something when I was young that really impacted me. It was on a nature show on how they capture monkeys in the jungle. They tie a clear jar to a tree, and they put a fruit in the jar. And the monkey reaches his hand in, he grabs the fruit, and he won't let go, even though they walk right up on him and are obviously going to catch him. And he's in a total panic, thrashing around, but he can't get his hand out of the jar because he's hanging on to the fruit, and he won't let go. And it struck me as being incredibly profound. I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, but the meaning of that really hit home with me then. I've never forgotten it, and how true it is today. How true it is today. People won't let go, even though our paradigm is imploding by the day. It will not continue for much longer. It cannot. So will we be the monkeys with our hand in the jar, or will we let go of what we have known, the reality we've known, and we'll have to let go? It's not going to be here much longer. Will we focus on what needs to be done? And I, even in recent weeks and months, I know our awareness is gaining on the climate engineering issue. At the same time, I know a lot of people who have just simply sat back down on the bench and chosen to do nothing. If they can't have immediate success from showing up to one event, they just give up. And that's not the way you win a battle. You stay in the trench every day. You decide what matters. You put off things that don't. The golfing, the football games. You watch the TV right now, I mean, you can only think, again, if you were some outside intelligence from some other place in the universe watching this unfold. I'm not saying there is or isn't, but I'm saying if there was, I can only imagine that anybody looking in on us would think, this race is hopeless. And I don't mean that focused at everybody, but taken as a whole, again, we have a power structure that's clinically insane and a population that wants to remain hopelessly out to lunch. I hope that changes. I truly hope that changes. For everybody who's helping that change, I salute you. I regard you. I'm very grateful for you. And for every single person we help wake up, it matters. In my mind, that has to matter. Regardless of the overall results that we haven't seen yet, but people are waking up, and very soon they're not going to have a choice anymore. So we look at society behaving, for example, the things that people do without questioning. I think of the soldiers at the nuke test that were told, look through these goggles at this nuclear bomb going off, and you'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Why didn't they question that? Why didn't they question that, really, are these goggles going to protect me from nuclear radiation? Really? Or the pilots who sprayed Agent Orange all over their own comrades on the ground. Didn't they question that? Really? I mean, obviously those chemicals had to be harmful. Why don't people question things? I saw an interview with the pilot of the Enola Gay that dropped the nuclear bombs on Japan. And it was interesting to see how he was rationalizing what he did, what he participated in, because it was simply too scary, I think, to realize how many human beings he helped to murder. So when we live in a society where people don't question, they stay rooted in their beliefs as if it's a religion, and they don't research, objectively anyway, we end up with what we have. And it is changing by the day, and there's no averting this overturning of the reality that we've known. But as dark as the horizon looks, and it looks very, very dark, I remember how tenacious life is. And I see, and sometimes in the urban settings, when you see this tiny blade of grass growing from the smallest penetration in this concrete jungle, it lives. It tries to live. I've seen large pine trees growing out of rock escarpments that there's no soil, there's just a crack. And somehow they've rooted into that crack, and they're thriving, or at least they were before they got saturated with the brew of toxic metals in our rain. But life tries to survive if it has any chance at all. So it's up to us to wake up, put other activities aside, and focus on what matters most. And so many people still are not doing that. We have all these different movements and organizations that aren't focusing on what matters. And case in point, I just tried to buy a booth at an upcoming Alzheimer's event in Northern California. I tried to be a sponsor for a $500 booth to support their cause. But when they asked why I wanted to be there, and they really grilled me because they didn't recognize the source of our booth, or the title of our booth, so they pried deeper. I wrote a letter to the administration of the Alzheimer's Foundation saying we simply wish to disclose that there's a lot of aluminum falling on us in Northern California, and that aluminum appears to be connected with Alzheimer's according to peer-reviewed study. They wrote me a letter back, which I'll publicize in the next 2 days or so when I get to it. We don't want you. We don't want you to sponsor our event. We don't recognize any connection with aluminum and Alzheimer's, so you're not welcome at our event. That's astounding, isn't it? That's absolutely astounding. And that can only mean, not that this is a surprise, the Alzheimer's Foundation, just like so many other quote-unquote foundations and environmental groups, are nothing but frauds. They're absolute frauds. The Sierra Club in Northern California, I met with the head of the Sierra Club numerous times, going back about 8-9 years, giving him mountains of data. The last encounter I had with him at Earth Day this year, and I asked him when was he going to address this issue, and not just hiding in the sand. He walked away. He didn't want to hear it. All they care about is their 501c3 and their job. That's all they care about. They're not there for the purpose that they state they're there for. They just simply wish to pretend they're doing something for the common good when they're not. So we're going to this Alzheimer's event, by the way. I'm not going to refrain just because they say I'm not welcome. We're going to round up about 24 activists with flyers and with DVDs, and we're going to dress in attire that attracts people, and we're going to hand them to every person there. Every person there is going to get a flyer and a DVD, and we're going to make a special flyer that outlines the behavior of the Alzheimer's Foundation, which can only be considered a fraud, a total fraud at this point. So no, we're not done with them. Absolutely not done with them. But that's the sort of hypocrisy we have in our world. So as, again, we head into this horizon of converging catastrophes, and that's all you can call it. It is total converging catastrophes. And to watch the TV, you'd think we were all existing in some kind of a three-ring perpetual circus, because that's what it looks like. Every society is like, it's like a heroin addict waiting for the next fix. Not just the power structure, but society is that way as well. People do not want to face reality, and they will alienate you if you try to point reality out to them. And I'm sure a lot of people listening on this, at least this radio show, know what I'm talking about, because they're trying. And again, I'm very honored to be in this company with Greg and with Russ and with others listening that are truly doing their best. And I would say this: no matter how much resistance you have gotten, people will be forced awake soon. So the seeds you are planting matter, and they will be fertilized with reality soon, and they will sprout. They won't have a choice. So let's press on. Let's keep our facts straight, our compass heading clear, and absolutely, positively not give up. So off air a minute ago, talking to Greg, said that they got absolutely hammered in Georgia, and I think Russ has said something like the same. So, Greg, we see the radical temperature swings going on. We see hurricanes being blown apart, absolutely blown apart. Had a good report from a video from the Harp Report showing the derivatives trading that appear to be extortion. That certain areas, municipalities are paying for their what amounts to insurance or protection from the cyclones that they're blowing apart in the Gulf. And is that just simply extortion? We'll keep blowing the hurricanes apart for New Orleans as long as you keep paying the paymaster. It's the degree that these weather mod programs are being used to hammer the population is profound, from sickening us, tearing the weather apart, destroying our crops. Anyway, we are under all-out assault. None of us can argue that. So, Greg, on that note, the all-out assault, that's what you got from what you described off the air, correct?
Yeah, when I left Thursday morning, I did go out early and watch, and by noon a little bit it dissipated, but it was flat out otherworldly. I'd like to it's climate engineering, but that's really probably and I've looked at the skies thousands and thousands of times, and for some reason that the other day just hit me, and you didn't get the video that I sent you. I'm going to send it again, Dane, but that felt like murder. I mean, that felt like depopulation. I could see jet behind jet behind jet spraying, 3 at one time, and the sky was just filled.
Got a little audio problem, Greg. You're kind of coming and going. Greg?
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
You're coming and going. Go ahead.
Yeah, the sky was just flat out nasty, is the way I referred to it in the video. And again, it looked more like depopulation than it did climate engineering.
Well,
Bad news.
Let's look at something that I just posted right now. This is public health emergency declared in Connecticut over Ebola, civil rights suspended indefinitely. So, again, all this connects to what you're seeing in your skies, people's immune systems being compromised. Here I have a direct quote from what has just passed. U.S. Governor Dan Malloy has declared a public health emergency in Connecticut, authorizing the, quote, isolation of any individual reasonably believed to have been exposed to the Ebola virus. That's a pretty broad statement. Simply put, as we noted previously, the state of public health emergency has allowed bureaucrats to detain and force vaccinate people without due process, despite not one single case being found in Connecticut. If there is a major Ebola pandemic in America, all of the liberties and freedoms that you currently enjoy would be gone. This is from Zero Hedge, and they're not. That's a more financial site, but they cover other issues. But this issue is that big, and I'm looking at the letter from the governor that states, I authorize the Commissioner of Public Health to order the isolation or quarantine under conditions prescribed by the Commissioner of Public Health of any individual or group of individuals whom the Commissioner reasonably believes to have been exposed to or infected with or otherwise at risk of passing the Ebola virus. That's a very broad statement. That's where we're headed. Ebola appears to have been engineered. They've been experimenting with it, beta tests for a long time. And there's just too much history here, and the walls are closing in by the day, not to mention the climate being ripped apart. Aside from Ebola, all our neurological issues, all of us are breathing this in. I know, Russ, you have trouble sleeping at night because this stuff is just hampering your health so much. So the walls are closing in by the day, and we still have a population that's largely asleep at the wheel, absolutely asleep at the wheel, and this is just completely astounding to me. And they're fighting and bickering about the most meaningless things. We're focused on the most meaningless things while we're knee-deep in water on the deck of the Titanic. So, Greg, had you heard about this thing in Connecticut, or Russ?
Most definitely, Dane.
You heard about this in Connecticut? Have you heard about this letter from Connecticut?
Are you talking to me, Dane?
Yes, you, Greg. Have you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the modus operandi, obviously, of the New World Order. And I just wonder how many other states are going to follow suit. I mean, we had Sandy Hook in Connecticut, and now we're getting this in Connecticut. And I just read the other day that one of the lead investigators of Sandy Hook, questioning that situation of what happened there, he expired unexpectedly. So they seem to be using Connecticut as a beta test area almost, and it's kind of frightening.
People involved in certain things do tend to expire, just like the whole SEAL team that was involved with the supposed Bin Laden assassination all expired. Isn't that astounding? And even the one person from the team that was not on the helicopter that went down, taking out all that the team that went into to get Bin Laden, this one person that was left also shortly after met an untimely demise. This is how the whole scenario is run. And with the population, as far as the population being able to sustain itself, with those in power are able to shut off the moisture, determine who gets rain, who doesn't, how toxic it is, What else is in it, God only knows. And then the last vestige of anything self-sustaining we might have, the groundwater, we see that wells all over the planet have been used as dumping grounds for industrial waste, pressure pumping this waste into the wells. And I just posted on this a few days ago. I got a letter from a friend at the EPA, and I saw it on RT now today, but we had it a few days ago in California. Billions of gallons pressure pumped into wells in the Central Valley. Wells that have been drained out because of the shutting off of the rain by the climate engineers. Then they fill the wells back up with industrial waste. Oh, I mean, I don't have the words for this. Why aren't people in the streets? Are they completely comatose at this point? That not only is the rain being shut off, but then the wells, the last bit of uncontaminated water we may have, are being pumped full of incredibly toxic industrial waste, much of it from the fracking holes. And how about fracking? How many people do you hear jumping up and down about what a wonderful thing fracking is? Hey, that's a great idea, isn't it? Let's bore a hole a couple miles into the strata and pump it full of chemicals. Nothing could go wrong with that, could it? Do you hear about, Greg, I mean, and Russ, Greg, let me take you first, and Russ. I mean, are the people that you're around, is this kind of conversation much on their minds? Does it come up? Or are they completely in Georgia, and Russ, you're in Philadelphia? Are you seeing anybody around you, Greg, you first, that's concerned with the complete annihilation of Earth's life support systems?
Dane, I still think there's a lot of ignorance out there. I think you have a lot of fear in those that are aware.
I'm really losing you, Greg. You there? Yeah, we're really losing you. I can't hear you now.
You can't hear me?
You're coming and going pretty bad.
Good. Hang on a second. Is that any better? Can you hear me any better now?
I hear you now, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let me repeat myself. I'm going to get on a hard line here, too, just in case they're messing with our phones. Is that any better?
I hear you. Go ahead.
I'd like to rule out any interference on the government side. But in any case, I think there's a lot of, I'm going to repeat what I said, there's a lot of ignorance and there's a lot of fear. And in talking with the contractors that I've worked with out here on the cabin, I'm doing a lot of the work. We're doing that ourselves. I was just talking with a deck builder yesterday, and he wasn't even aware that there was a third tower at 9/11. Wasn't aware that he was being sprayed. And unfortunately, you've got people with their nose to the grindstone, trying to take care of their family, trying to take care of their kids, keep their houses paid for and cars paid for and everything else. And that involves steep learning curves, and they just haven't taken the time. They don't have the time, or maybe they're making a conscious choice not to take the time to learn. But I think there is a lot of ignorance, and I think that there's, among those that already know, there's a lot of fear. They think that, like Kennedy pulled on them, or Danny Jawanko, the guy that said that Building 7 unequivocally was a controlled demolition. Within, I think a week or two, he expired, the term we just used. But, we can't be afraid of that at this point. Afraid of what it might do to us.
The reason people are ignorant, in a lot of cases, I'm not saying all, is because they've never taken the time to actually objectively investigate anything. And even for those with their nose in the grindstone, and I have compassion for those people who are simply trying to keep food on the table for their family. I have total compassion for those people. But I know a whole bunch of other people who, yes, their nose is on the grindstone because they have a massive amount of material possessions that they do not need and now have to support, and their life is spent as a squirrel on a treadmill trying to support those material possessions they never needed to begin with, so they don't have time to actually figure out what's going on in the bigger picture. I know
That's an
a
excellent
lot of
point,
people
Dane.
that pardon me?
That's an excellent point. A lot of this is by choice. You know, did they need the Cadillac or did they need the Mercedes or the Acura or whatever it happens to be? So now, I remember as a kid growing up, we were actually poor and had one vehicle in the family, and everybody had to use it, and it was an old vehicle and it had problems. And I remember my own father saying he raised 4 kids on $14,000 a year. So, you know, people, like you said, they put themselves on a treadmill by choice, and it's no wonder they have to have their nose to the grindstone. You know, maybe you don't need a $400,000 or $500,000 house. You know,
And even then, they always find time to go out and jet ski for the weekend, or go to the football game, or watch the fights on Sunday, or whatever people do, American Idol. They always find time for that. But yet, even though they claim to love their children, they seem to not be able to or willing to make the time to find out what's going on. And even at this late date, when the biosphere is imploding, it's absolutely imploding, and the party's over. For those that don't realize it yet, I'll tell you, the party's over. And I don't state that from some sort of belief system. It's based on fact, what we know to be happening on the ground. If you look at trajectories mathematically, the reality we've known is ending by the day. So we have a choice. We can face it and try to alter the course as much as possible so there's something left to salvage, or we can continue to play shuffleboard on the deck of the Titanic until we're at the bottom of the sea. So, and again, I know a lot of people listening to this show are trying, and I'm not. My angst is really directed at people like the Alzheimer's Foundation, who are not only worthless, they're a part of the problem. Their hypocrisy is unbelievable, and I'm gonna make a real effort to try to expose that hypocrisy in that case especially. So anyway, we're at the point where people must make a choice. Russ, sorry to leave you out so far. You're in Maine right now. What's the sky like there?
It's overcast, pretty cool. It's pretty cold. But, I wanted to pitch in with the previous statements that you all were making. We have these laws about being able to vaccinate anybody or detain people without their consent because the government suspects that they might be infected. I've been thinking about this week about bringing this question to the public. If a law is immoral, is it really a law? If it's completely immoral, is it really a law? Should we consider it a law?
It shouldn't be. So here we have this kind of thing cropping up immediately with an engineered pathogen that's being released. And, who knows how far this will go. I don't claim to know how far that they'll allow it to go or push it. And then we have, as discussed last week, top researchers in the world from MIT stating that within 10 years, 1 in 2 children will have autism, this mountain of metal raining down on us. And you have a whole society that is so busy on their iPhones, they can't or won't look up. They believe whatever they're told. And this is across the board. I mean, you know what? I hear a lot of people within the anti-climate engineering movement that certainly are understandably frustrated with those who just can't seem to bring themselves to see or acknowledge the very clear and obvious spraying going on above us. But then I see certain belief systems within our own community that are nothing more than that, a belief system that's not based on fact either. So all of us need to look at data and what's happening around us, the actual events on the ground, and not jump at something because the headline sounds good, the author seems to make sense, they seem sincere. None of that matters. What matters is facts. What do we see happening on the ground? What dots really fit into this puzzle? So all of us have to challenge our quote belief systems. It's truly tough to break away from the lens that we've all formed for ourselves based on our experiences and our bias. So we all have to break away from that. But at this point, the normalcy bias that society has, that they think nothing can change their reality, they're about to hit the wall hard. Society's about to hit the wall hard. Greg, anybody around you seem to have a clue about that?
I think people are slowly waking up, but I think whether they wake up or not is going to be dependent on whether activists like you and I and all the others that are making an effort. I made this point the other day in a post I made on Facebook that we do have to push ourselves to hand out your brochures and to hand out your DVDs, and no matter where we go, whether it be, maybe it's not the most politically correct thing to interrupt somebody in the middle of their dinner, but I actually, when I leave a restaurant, I take a pile of brochures with me, and I'll give brochures to people when I come in, and I'll give brochures to people when I leave, and I guess I'm less concerned about whether I've interrupted them as I am about whether I can help save their life, and I really think that we have to push ourselves. And I've heard people tell me, well, I'm not a salesman, I'm not good at that. Well, you better become good at it. We all have to push ourselves to get out of our comfort zone and reach other people before it's just too late. I myself don't want to have to look back and say, wow, I wish I would have done this or I wish I would have done that when it is too late.
On that note, for those that don't realize it yet, the reality we have known is done. It's not coming back. It's disintegrating by the day. But, and I don't say this to try to put people in a state of shock that they won't act and try to help us in this. What I'm trying to point out is that you have to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. So the fact that our former reality is done, the planet's not going to return to what we've known. It's not going to happen. Too much damage is done. And now we're simply trying to salvage a planet that might sustain life in some places. That's how bad it is. But no matter how dark the horizon, what does one choose to do? The right thing or the wrong thing? It's that simple. Are people going to do the right thing or are they going to do nothing, which is clearly the wrong thing? So when we have, at this point, things deteriorating with this sort of speed, this is where people find out what they're made of, quite simply. What are they made of? Now is when people can truly choose to make the most profound of differences, and I hope everybody does, everybody out there. And we have so many tools at our disposal if we simply chose to use them. At least we do right now while we have the internet going. But this, on one more little excerpt from this Connecticut issue that was just put out, I'm quoting directly, we are taking this action today to ensure that we are prepared in advance to deal with any identified cases in which someone has been exposed to the virus. Worst case, said Governor Malloy, our state's hospitals have been preparing for it. The public health officials from the state working around the clock to monitor the situation. Right now, we have no reason to think that anyone in the state is infected, but it is essential to be prepared, and we need to have the authorities in place that will allow us to move quickly to protect public health, i.e. quarantine. And when that becomes necessary, signing this order will allow us to do that. So they've already put this in place. Now, we said for a long time, I put in my disseminations for a long time, as the power structure is pushed into a corner, as the curtain is pulled back, they will become more dangerous, and the possibility of them spreading a pathogen was immense. And that's exactly what we see happening. Why would we expect them not to play this card knowing they're holding it? And now they're playing it. And even now, even people who have been told this and had this pointed out to them, same with the California drought here, pointed out to them years in advance with credible data to back it up. It's happening now. They still go golfing on Sunday. They still go to whatever church they go to that refuses to acknowledge this issue. And I'm not faulting any particular belief system, but I'm saying the churches are damn guilty. I don't know any of them from any particular belief system that is addressing this issue. I know none, not in the continental U.S., because they're all protecting their 501c3s. And I've spoken to the pastors from Mormon churches, the Christian churches from many different denominations, Calvary Chapel, the Baptist Church. I've been into Buddhist temples. I don't know any of them who are showing the courage to face this issue. None. And how does that square with the stated philosophies of each of these institutions? It doesn't square. It doesn't square at all. It's a complete shirking of that responsibility. So why would we spend our days there if it's just hypocrisy? And I'm not faulting anybody's belief system, not at all. There's great value in them, and I'm not taking sides, but I'm saying I've been into all of them, and I see nothing from any of them. Nothing. So if you're in one of those churches, isn't it up to you to bring this up to the pastor, to the congregation, to say, hey, we're ignoring what we claim to believe in? True or not? Russ, I'm asking you, I think you're a part of a group. Is there any acknowledgement of this, any willingness to look at this in the congregation that you're involved with?
Not really. I think most congregations, unfortunately, that I've been to a lot of churches, and there's a lot of comfort zone going on in my experience. Now, that's not true of all churches, but that's true of so many churches, but it's true of everybody. And I think, Dane, we fall into this problem. This is what civilization has gone through over and over again, as people become apathetic, they begin not to care, and then they fall into tyranny, and then they fall into oppression, and then the cycle continues. This was actually talked about by Adam Weishaupt, who talked about this great cycle of civilization, and this is what, there's some truth to that, even though he was kind of a bad guy. There was truth to that, the fact that there are these cycles, but it's because people, and that's why I would like to challenge people to do something. It feels good. I mean, if you have to reach down inside yourself to do something you know is right, but you have to feel good about it, then I would challenge people to try it, because it's very, very liberating, and it's very empowering when you actually go out and you start opening people's eyes. Go on a busy street and hold up a sign. You can reach thousands of people or hand out flyers like you say all the time. But I would challenge people to do that, But unfortunately, Dane, the world is in this state of just deadness, and it's very, very frustrating for those people who have their eyes open.
I think the big burden of responsibility, especially in a lot of the churches, are the quote-unquote pastors. Those supposed leaders should bear a huge amount of responsibility for their unwillingness to show any courage at all. And there's some congregations here in Northern California that are, a couple thousand strong. And about the uniform answer I've had from several of these meetings with the head of these churches is, we're not interested in this information. Thank you very much. And I've not left with that. I can't walk away with that. And when I point out that their own scripture mandates they cannot turn a blind eye to this kind of information, they cannot. And I've shamed them into taking it, but I don't think it went much further than that. And so, again, like the Alzheimer's Association, the hypocrisy with this church leadership is astounding. It's truly astounding to me. And so people that are in those congregations should stand up and challenge that leadership. They should challenge it. And this is part of how the power structure has controlled society from top to bottom. It all comes down to money in the end, doesn't it? It all does. Because most of our society is trained, very well trained, to respond to that factor as the bottom line principle of everything they do. So we have the 501 nonprofits that control the churches and a lot of these organizations like the Alzheimer's organization. We have states and counties and cities literally being kept afloat by printed, fed money. It's kept the whole system afloat, a giant snake eating its own tail, and we are at the end. That reality is floating by the day. The power structure, you can bet from here on out, will be increasingly dangerous because they are out of options. The facade can no longer be maintained, and it's imploding by the day. So if people want to feel solace, there's solace in knowing you're doing the right thing for the right reasons. That's where solace lies. Russ, open up the phone lines if you would, and if people call in, so we can share as much of people's questions with as many people as possible. Somebody does call in, just if you can ask a question, and we'll try to get to it as quick as we can and move on.
Absolutely. For those who want to call in, the call-in number is 718-717-5555. 8296. That's 718-717-8296. We do have a caller if you're ready to take calls, Dane.
Yeah, let's roll.
Caller with your phone number that ends in 62. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good. This is Ty again from East Texas. What's up, Dane and Russ?
Hey, Ty, how are you? What's your question today, amigo?
I have a really quick question. I stumbled upon this article, Obama takes a bold step to engineer climate change, or geoengineer climate change. Quote, unquote, I've got a pen and a phone. If Congress won't do its job, I'll do mine. I'm sure you guys know about this. I think it happened in 2013 and some more. I guess he has another thing in 2014. You know, he's wanting to, he's kind of saying, you know, in so many words that they're going to start, you know, implementing geoengineering. What's y'all's take on this? And, you know, I'm sure you guys have discussed.
Are you talking about the article that was published in Huffington Post? That was one place it was published. Okay, that was published on.
That's what I'm reading out of.
That was published on April 1st, and you know I put a scathing reply out to that article that you know whether they intended that as a covert way to get some truth out, but then paint it as a joke because that's what they did, and that's simply inexcusable. And the Huffington Post is certainly bought, sold, and paid for, like so many other quote-unquote independent sources, like Democracy Now! If anybody knows what Democracy Now! Is, Amy Goodman, I've met her twice. It was not a pleasant experience either time. She's, in my opinion, very different than what she portrays herself to be on the air. I'm sorry to say that. I'm sorry if it offends anybody, but I know she accepts money from the Ford Foundation, and she is not allowed to talk about certain things. So she's sold out. It's that simple. The biggest independent news on the planet sold out, just like Huffington Post, just like the article you brought up, Ty. So many people have sold out. There's no other word for it. And so that's their karma. But the rest of us can do our best to try to bring this to light, and again, to think past certain things, the Al Gore, Obama, and anytime the climate change issue comes up, everybody's polarized. Nobody's looking, you know, a lot of people aren't looking at facts, quite simply. I know somebody here in Northern California that even though it's hotter than hell here, everything's burning to the ground. I mean, there's no snow in the mountains. Snow that was on mountains year-round forever now is gone at the start of summer, Mount Lassen, Mount Shasta. And still this person persists that she thinks the planet's cooling. And I don't know how that, I don't really know how people can subsist or persist in that belief. I don't know. And her premise was because if methane was really melting, then why would there be methane coming out of fracking holes too? Well, at a certain point you have to stop and think, well, if someone drills a hole 2 miles into the earth and dumps 500 chemicals down that hole, yeah, you can release some methane that way too, but what does that have to do with methane thawing and freezing in other areas? People just have to stop, think, and look at the facts, get past the biases and so forth, and also be very careful to look at articles like what you bring up, Ty, when they make a statement like that, and then at the very bottom of that article, if you look, there's a comment about it being April 1st, April Fools. So this is the sort of covert discrediting that people try to do. And everybody has to be astute. This is the point I'm making. Everybody has to be astute, challenge your beliefs, challenge your perspectives, get past your biases, and look at reality. So thanks for bringing that article up, Ty. And anyway, we'll, it could still be used as a point of reference for what the media is doing. And we'll all keep our eye to the horizon.
Hey, I have one more quick question if you have time.
Go ahead, quick, Ty.
You know, we see the trails during the day in front of the sun. A lot of times all we can do is speculate and kind of connect the dots. Here lately it's been really obvious when the full moon comes out that they're spraying, you know, in front of the moon similar to the sun, which is pretty confusing because I can understand why they would want to reflect the sun, but they're doing the same thing on the moon. And what is your take on that?
It has nothing to do with blocking. When they spray at night, what we've observed that happening, like in Northern California, when they're trying to build high pressure, it can have there can be a lot of reasons why they would spray at night. If there's moisture coming, it might be to migrate that AR, the atmospheric river. But we do see in Northern California when they really hammer it at night, it appears they're trying to build the heat, trying to build the high pressure to make the high pressure stronger. So it's not about blocking the moon. I mean, that's, the fact you see a moon, I don't see or have not found any reference that would indicate that's any part of the equation. There would be no reason for that. But there's other factors that cause them to spray at night at times. But that is not the norm in many areas. So it just depends on what they're trying to do at a given point in time with given conditions. But anyway, it's certainly, we all agree they're spraying. We all agree it must stop. And let's focus on our common ground there for sure. Thanks, Ty. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks.
Hey, y'all have a good one.
You too.
Thank you, Ty. Caller with your phone number that ends in 08. Who are we speaking with?
Good morning. This is Corey.
Hi, Corey.
Hey,
How
Corey.
are you?
Good. How are you? Good to hear from you.
Good. I have just a couple things. One, a lot of people are aware that yesterday Facebook shut me down after posting one of Dane's articles, and I didn't even offer commentary. They told me I would be shut down for 2 weeks, and it actually only lasted about 6 hours. I kept testing it through the day, but that gives me awareness that we're being monitored and so forth, and that was very interesting. There are a couple things I wondered if you could address. One, a lot of us are noticing the sunsets are more pink, more orange, and a lot of people are reporting that they're not feeling well, that their memory capacity isn't there, that they're getting headaches, feeling kind of dumbed down. So I wonder if you could speak to that. I'm also really curious about what you know about the typhoon on the way to Japan. And then the third thing is, again, if you could please emphasize again why warming is a reality and not a hoax.
Why warming is.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people
first,
are very confused about that.
First, on Greg, I don't know if you knew this. Corey got shut down yesterday. Russ, and I don't know if you got that word either, but that's pretty alarming. I think you posted on a news site to Colorado. That's all you did, to some Colorado news site. You posted one of my articles, and that happened, right, Corey?
Exactly, immediately.
So that's pretty astounding.
And Facebook asked me, in order to let me back on, I had to identify people by photograph, and that was pretty creepy too.
So
wow.
Here's one thing we want those out there listening, those people who have sold their honor, people at Facebook and Google and everywhere else that they monitor everything and they just do what they're told. We want them to listen. But this is really important for everybody listening right now. When you post a comment, and I know Corey didn't do this, so this doesn't apply to what Corey just did, but it's imperative when people post comments, because a lot of them are good comments that I have to delete and I can't allow onto GeoEngineering Watch because they're comments that make that are 90% solid, and then somewhere in the comment it says we need to blow those jets out of the air or something like that. You can't say that. That's not going to win our cause. Not at all. You can't make such a statement. In fact, we need the military on our side. The only chance we have is to have the military on our side. And these are a lot of good men and women that are simply not looking at the bigger picture right now, and we need to help them to look at the bigger picture because we have to have them on our side. And when I think of the KC-135 pilot I spoke to face-to-face, why would I want to do anything to harm anybody like that? He didn't know what he was doing. He's just doing what he was told. We need to reach them and wake them up, not make them our adversaries. So when people post comments, make it intelligent. Don't use foul language that I can't post either because it doesn't make us look credible and professional. Be articulate and state things, yes, firmly, but not militantly, and put up or post comments that we can pass on or we can actually put up on the blog. So anyway, it's important how things are stated. Now, you mentioned everybody getting sick, Corey. Yes, absolutely, people are getting sick because they're spraying like there's no tomorrow, because on the current course there won't be. Methane is filling the atmosphere right now. Climate engineering is making it worse, not better. The clouds you see, some of that may be an effect of the methane is saturating the atmosphere. Most of it is the aerosol still, but we are seeing more noctilucent clouds, which is probably tied to the increased methane saturation. The methane, if it continues, will exterminate life on Earth in the near term. this is back to where people need to look at reality. And if I could jump to, tie that in with your final question of warming, cooling, I'm simply asking people this will unite our cause more. People look at the data. Greg, share with us, if you will, what you saw that made you see past the propaganda people have to stop and think, who would want you to think the planet's cooling? Fossil fuel industry? Climate engineers? Absolutely the climate engineers right now. We know, when you see the Weather Channel that's owned by the Rothschilds, that is trying desperately to only focus on cool things, cool headlines and cool records, and they don't talk about every place that's burning to the ground around the planet. Greg, what brought you to the place where you realized that, hey, we all don't like Al Gore, and none of us agree with carbon credits. That's a total sham. But there's still reality, and climate engineering is making that reality worse. What was really imperative to you in that equation, Greg?
Well, I had a similar experience with what Richard Gage recited. I think he said it was in 04 or 05 when it took him several years to come around to the idea that he had been hoodwinked. And I remember watching Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth, and I had family members that were buying hybrid vehicles and Priuses, and they had, kind of fell for some of Al Gore's propaganda. I think I was kind of just hadn't done enough research to make an intelligent decision on whether we had global warming and global cooling. And Dane, you and I have talked about Alex Jones, how, I look at a lot of different issues, so I'm not an expert on any of them. I'm kind of looking at the big picture, where obviously you're specializing in the geoengineering, but I think, you put me on to chasing ice and dimming the sun, especially chasing ice. If people would just take the time to watch that is so hard to deny, the hard evidence of glaciers all over the world diminishing, reducing in size on a massive scale, and there's no exceptions. I think there's somewhere around 30 glaciers that they track over a multi-year period, and they're just shrinking.
Actually, they track the number in that range on film, but there are hard statistical facts on 1,400 major glacial fields around the globe. 1,396 of them are either gone or in rapid decline, and the others there's insufficient data on. So continue on. There's a huge numbers in that arena.
Yeah, so and that's great data, because if people would just watch that documentary, if they would watch Dimming the Sun, they'd learn to understand that obviously, like everything else, we're being confused. You're seeing global cooling, global warming, just make everybody confused so they don't know what to believe. But there's no doubt in my mind after watching those documentaries and doing additional research. But like we've said, Dane, it's a steep learning curve, and hopefully at least the people in our movement come to the agreement that we obviously have global warming. But again, even for those people, it's a steep learning curve, because it takes hours and hours to do the research to come to that conclusion. So I hope people...
It also takes abandoning they have to abandon their biases too. And also, and this is why it matters, because every time we have this conversation, people think, oh, yeah, he loves Al Gore. It has nothing to do with Al Gore. It has to do with not wanting to say and support exactly what the climate engineers want us to say and support, as if these cooling events are somehow natural. And they're not natural. They're completely unnatural and completely engineered, and that's what's so perplexing about the, quote, anti-engineering community, that then suddenly is blind to the fact that these cool downs, these chemically nucleated, jet steer manipulated cool downs, are totally unnatural. So how can they put that in the equation as somehow being natural and ignore the very facts that support the fight they claim to be involved with? That's my question. Corey.
Yeah.
Are you there?
I'm here.
Does that make sense? That's why people wonder why that I'm so adamant about this issue, because to not acknowledge the fact that climate engineering is making a bad situation worse, and these cool downs are anything but natural. They're not natural. They're totally engineered, and to say otherwise is to support the climate engineers, and that's what I don't want us to do.
Right. Okay. Helpful.
So that's a great question, and I think on the sickening again, it can't not happen as they dump more on us, whether there's biological agents in or not. As Greg said, and Russ, you said the spraying's been horrific where you're at too, right?
Absolutely been horrible. We've got a couple callers or so. Yeah, it's been
Okay.
horrible in Philadelphia. Absolutely horrible.
Goodbye.
So the more they spray, the worse we're all going to get, Corey. So again, we're back to sounding the alarm. And hey, keep us posted on your Facebook situation.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Okay, Russ, let's blow them out quick.
Corey, Corey, I'm so sorry. This is Russ. I'm so sorry to hear what happened to you. This is very very, very frustrating. Caller with your phone number that ends in 40. Are you there?
Yeah, guys, it's Steve from Alaska.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
I just wanted to mention something I've mentioned before, how our leaves on our trees and all of our underbrush, it all just turned brown and dried up early in the summer. And it's just, we didn't have any color this year. Our fall colors were basically non-existent. Now we've lost probably 95% of our leaves. There's still a few hanging on. But everything that's falling off the trees it looks like it's been hit with fungus. You can't find a perfect leaf anymore like you did when you were kids or when you were younger, where all these leaves would fall off the trees and they'd be beautiful colors and they'd still have a full intact leaf even after they've fallen off the trees. Now they fall and you rake them up in a pile, and if you look at the pile of leaves, it's devastated. All the leaves are curled and brown and have spots on them, and people just don't seem to notice it. I've been using it as a point to get it across to people what's happening. I've been showing them the trees, and it's just one of the best ways I know right now to wake people up to this. But on another note, I wanted to say, I'm sorry, I just wanted to mention one more thing. I really think we need to do, instead of a worldwide march against geoengineering like has been done a couple of times, we need to do one march. Everybody go to Washington. I'm talking millions, several million people all at once. I've got the airline miles, I've got the means to get down there and do it, and I will go. And I think a lot of other people would too. So maybe we could plan something like that. I mean, a massive, massive march on Washington, D.C.
At some point, I think, I hope that's a possibility, Steve. Right now, if they won't even show up in their local town center, they're not going to fly to Washington. I think your idea is good, but we have to get people to the point where they understand the immediacy, urgency, and totality of what we face. And, maybe that can come at some point on the trees. Yes, it's astounding that people don't notice the trees in our city dead everywhere. I'll do a video on this showing UV readings soon. But your point's well taken, amigo, and this is what people have to, as we discussed earlier in the show, they have to open their eyes, face reality, and join us in the fight, because soon nothing else will matter if we don't deal with this. Thanks for the heads up on that, Steve.
I want to mention one more thing. Migratory birds. Every fall, September and October, we have thousands and thousands, just flocks and flocks of geese, snow geese, Canadian geese, even the swans. This year they're almost non-existent.
Yeah, we don't see any geese down here either. I mean, I've seen nothing migrating overhead. So you're again, the biosphere is collapsing right now. So your points are all super well taken, Steve. Thanks for the call.
Thanks for the time, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, we got about 60 seconds. A caller with your phone number that ends in 10. You got about 30 seconds. Who are we speaking with?
Yeah, hi guys. This is Dan Cherry in Rochester, New York. How are you today?
Good, Dan. How are you?
Good, great. Thanks, guys. Hey, just a quick question, 2 questions real quick, Dane. I saw a picture from...
Dan, we got about 20 seconds, my friend.
That's all, Dan. Make it super fast.
I got you. I saw a picture from North Korea, and it looked like there were chemtrails behind there. And you talked about geoengineers. How do they tie into other countries? And why don't we hear about Californians losing it over the devastation you guys are going through?
Well, because they're not waking up, Dan, but they'll have to wake up soon. We'll finish that next week. Russ, you can finish us off.
Thank you for calling, Dan. This is UCY Radio every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 noon Central, 12 noon Pacific. We'll see you next week on UCY.
Blue skies are gold and white, lines appear, them stay is natural.